shall we?
All right.
All right.
Let's do it.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Good Dudes Real Estate Podcast.
Episode 12, I believe.
Episode 11, 12?
Oh, 11.
11?
Yep.
Episode 11.
My bad. Got 12 in my head.
Yeah. What's going on, Cam?
Not much.
Big news for you in your household?
Yeah. Baby boy is Canada
boy.
Day born. So
Nice.
it's been a little bit hectic and took a little bit of a break here. Well, not too long.
You were pretty quick. You were...
No, I know we were supposed to do an episode last week though,
Yeah.
and kind of had to say let's bump it to this week. So but yeah, still, what are we? The 6th, 5 days later. So
5 days later, you're back on the road.
Yeah, it's
Just
been
chasing deals.
well, not quite, but condensed schedule and no, it's great. We're happy. Baby's happy. Mommy's happy and doing well. So.
It's got to be great being self-employed and having the ability to, take away when you want it to.
Yeah.
Come back when you want to.
To an extent, people always assume that when you're a real estate agent, you have this freedom to pick your schedule whenever you want. But like, I had people messaging me while I'm in the hospital about revisit appointments and they just don't know, right? But again, you're kind of like, I'm not answering that right now, but then they're like wondering why you're not answering, and you're kind of like, listen, sorry, I'm in the hospital right now having a baby. They're like, oh, and then they're obviously like, they get it,
then
but
they understand.
but it's still like, I don't like to like drop that, like, hey, here's why, but it's part of the business, right? Like you are on call 24/7, especially if you're working with buyers and a property comes up or something like that. But, it's going to be interesting balancing now because my daughter is she's turning 3 and, I'm now full-time daughter duty. So off from teaching for 4 weeks. So that'll be nice. Doing the morning routine and evening routine and stuff. But it'll be an adjustment, but hey, that's life. It's like anything. So
that's awesome, man. So this week we want to talk about a few topics and try and go in more detail on the topics. Yeah,
I think we'll do like a personal update. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on in the market. And then I believe the plan was touch on whether to separate your meters or not, what that looks like for tenants after, pros and cons kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I think we're going to touch on the N11 and N12 process. Right now we're seeing deals where, there's homes that are available that come with tenants, right? And you can get a good discount on it. So we're going to touch on that a little bit later on. But what's happening with you? I heard you bought a third property.
Yeah. So
man, this guy's a machine. Slow down.
Yeah. I was always eyeing the McLaughlin area in Oshawa. You have one in McLaughlin, and I like the area because it's what we consider, a type neighborhood. Lots are wider, so minimum you're looking at 45-foot frontage.
Literally, you're underselling it right now. It is where you want.
Minimum, I would say, is even bigger. It's probably like 50-foot wide lots. You're as deep as at times 130, 150. So they're huge lots. So we purchased a lot that was 55 by 135. To the right of the house, there's a laneway that shoots to the back of the property. So nothing blocking it, goes straight to the back of the property, which would be great if, in the future we want to do something else in the backyard. So it's one of those properties where, to a certain extent, I felt like, I personally need to experiment with it to see if it's going to work, because it's what we're talking about in terms of the new reality in Oshawa, right? It's a premium. We're paying a premium. We bought it for $755. So it's a premium.
$755, and it needs how much work?
$100K work.
Yeah. Which some people would listen to that or maybe listening to this and going, wow, that's crazy. But again, I think you're underselling the area a little bit. It is the premium area of Oshawa where you want to buy and hold a rental property. This is not a flip for you. This is a long-term buy and hold, quality area on massive lots with garden suite potential. So you're already thinking of, the 3 units in the future, which is hard for some investors to see. And the numbers don't always show that, right? The numbers aren't always as sexy as, as some other properties may be, but they're not ideal, where this is just such a quality product that you purchased. And I helped a couple investors purchase properties similar in that area as well. I think they're getting it to the mindset of, hey, this is a long-term purchase, not just quick flip is different, right? This would not be a good quick flip purchase, but yeah, good for you, man.
Yeah. So, it was really a matter of, let's see if this is going to work, and let's just try it out and see if it works or not.
It'll work.
It'll work for sure. Yeah. But, I wanted to kind of do this so we can also show other people that you can do it and it makes sense.
You're walking the walk too.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
Just talking it. Yeah. And we had our first workshop. That was a success. Small group we had, but that's what we wanted to keep it with COVID still, subsiding here and things opening up and stuff. So we looked at a couple properties, and one of them actually was the one that I purchased. For an investor. So that doesn't always.
And that
happen.
was also in the McLaughlin area.
That's it, right?
And
same style, right?
Same style, and you
paid
guys,
$786, but two kitchens. Already had two kitchens, 58 by 130 lot. Same idea, right? And multiple offers, having to, compete. So you're paying a premium now. But again, as we talked about in our last episode, this is the new reality of Oshawa, South Oshawa, right? We've talked, you can get cheaper deals and things like that. And as we'll touch on later, if you're taking on tenants, there's definitely opportunity to,
I would say the more we talk to people and even ourselves, like working on deals, I've had a client purchase in McLaughlin, again, at $820 for a bungalow.
Yep.
But again, like 60-foot lot by 140.
Yep. Yep.
It's so there's potential there. People see it. The end consumer sees it. The end buyer sees it. So I think there's a demand for it. And, when you look at Oshawa, of course, everyone wants to be North Oshawa, close to Taunton, that Taunton corridor. And sure, why not? If you can, go for it. But those bungalows as is are $850.
Yeah.
So there's a premium there too.
Well, always, right? Location is key, right? And the product that you get. But no, I mean, obviously we're both very bullish on McLaughlin area. But you're going to pay a premium, but we're thinking long term, right?
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
We do have our next workshop planned.
That's right.
So I figured we could touch on that. It's not for another 2.5 weeks, so July 24th. We're going to do it in the morning at 10 a.m. We'll hopefully be able to meet at the office here. That was one kind of hiccup we had. We thought we usually like to meet at the office, grab a coffee, introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about what we're doing, and then hit the road and go check out some properties. We had to go do that in one of your properties, which is all good. It still worked out well. But July 24th, mark your calendars if you are interested in coming out and checking out the Oshawa area and looking at a few properties that are on the market.
That's right. Speaking of the market, do you want to quickly touch base on the CMHC's announcement, their recent announcement on July 5th, which I believe was yesterday. So CMHC, the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, which insures mortgages that are the unconventional mortgages, where in the event that you don't put down 20% on your purchase, you have to essentially pay an insurance premium to CMHC, and they insure the property for you in the event of financial distress. And CMHC is essentially the party that introduced the stress test, which says that in order to, and that was in 2016, right? CMHC is the party that says
April 2017.
April 2017. Yeah. So CMHC is the body that says if you want to purchase a property and you're not putting down 20%, you need to qualify at a higher rate to be able to prove to the financial institutions that in the event there is a interest rate increase, you're able to essentially fund your mortgage.
Which was smart.
Which is smart. Which is great. I know when we speak with a lot of people in the public, everyone's always, when everyone's talking about real estate and price correction, people are going back to interest rates. Well, I can't wait till interest rates to go up to see how the market, and that's when the market's going to crash. But we're looking at these institutions and we're saying that, hang on a second, like these institutions have already accounted for that. They've qualified their buyers at a higher rate. So technically, based on how they've qualified, they should be able to. And the interest rate that they're qualifying people on is much higher. It's at
5%, just over 5%.
Yeah. Right now, mortgage rates are around 2%. And when rate increases come up, we're seeing like 5.25% of an increase. So in order for it to go up to 5%, it's going to take a long time. So CMHC essentially they made an announcement that they were going to increase the stress test up to 5.25% in order to manage the market.
And the issue was the other two insurers didn't follow suit.
That's right. Yeah.
Like they thought they would, right?
Yeah.
So
there's two other players in the market that kind of do the same thing that CMHC does. CMHC is the more, they're in the media more often, so people know them more. So CMHC has said that they're going to tighten their guidelines, but the other two corporations have said, we're just sticking to. And essentially CMHC came out and said that they made an announcement yesterday that they've actually lost some market share. And they're saying that they're actually owning up to the fact that what they did, the increase in the criteria was a mistake. And they're owning up to it. And they see that it in fact did not help the market at all. So,
well, again, so the question is, they're essentially saying, okay, we're going to relax our rules again. So it's like, oh man, like here we go again, right? You're going to relax the rules on lending. Higher prices, right? More people can leverage up more. People are going to have an easier time getting loans now. Here we go again. And people worried about or waiting for corrections. Again, I just don't see it happening in the next year and a half, 2 years, based off of everything we're hearing. After that, who knows, right? Even that is a bold prediction, but no, it's interesting to hear that they're a business, right? They're wanting their market share back and realizing that the other two insurers didn't follow suit. So,
I mean, the same logic. We're talking about people waiting for a correction, and those same people were talking about this last year and saying, how can this be sustainable? How can this be sustainable? And if you had purchased a property last year in June, which was still climbing, we were climbing the market, you've made 33%.
Sure.
That's a large sum. And some people are literally now in the process of selling properties they bought last year. I'm seeing bungalows that people bought, converted, and now they're selling it at $799, $899. And these are bungalows that people bought for $580, $620 in some cases.
That makes sense.
So again, the same narrative is still in play, right? People are saying, is this sustainable? How far can this go? And when it comes to investment properties, we're literally saying, we're making purchases based on numbers and based on, what the strategy is.
Well, again, the big thing for me was, okay, we were both agree that, look, the way interest rates are, doesn't seem to be any government intervention in sight. They're printing billions, trillions of dollars for inflation to happen. And the big thing for me was rents. Okay, well, does this cash flow? Because I still, I've always been bullish on Durham region because of, the idea that the values could go up. And I agree. I think they're still going to see them go up. But I think what's most surprising to me is rents have gone up too. Like crazy amount. I just rented my basement apartment, which was getting $14.25 plus 40% utilities for $16.25 plus utilities. And I had 100 people interested, right? So $200 a month increase. My upper unit now needs to be increased. They're only paying $17.50, I believe, which now we're could probably get $2,200 a month, right? Which is crazy to me. Which is absolutely crazy to me. And there was no rent increases allowed this past year, so we couldn't even increase it a little bit. But it's gone up $300-400. Which is wild, and I'm getting some really high quality tenants message me, and which is good to see.
Can we talk briefly about your tenant profile?
Sure.
I get that conversation a lot. What's the tenant profile like? So you recently leased out a lower 2-bedroom unit. Let's talk about, maybe you can give us an idea of who the top 3 people were who applied.
So the top 3 people, one was it was essentially a 24-year-old girl who was out in Kingston, was renting out, was helping her grandmother out there, but she was going to come back. She had 2 cats, no smoking, but her parents were basically going to go on the lease. Her parents were very wealthy. They proved that they were very wealthy. And so I was like, great, you're going to be paying me directly. The parents would be for this 24-year-old girl who's going to start working and kind of get her life going. But again, I like the guarantee from the parent. Another one was a daughter where her mother had sold her house. She was 70 years old, tons of money, as we've talked about, tons of equity. And again, seemed very promising. I was not sure about the older lady just because I've liked, more young professionals. And the guy I rented to makes $75,000 a year by himself, no smoking, no pets, which to me was the big one. Like the other ones all had some type of pet or something along there. He has an 11-year-old daughter that has 50% of the time that he sees. So I was like, okay, she's old enough now that I'm not too concerned with it. I like to stay away from people that are kids under 3, especially since I have a 3-year-old right now. I'm like, no, I know what they do, right? You can't fool me. There's no good 3-year-olds. No offense to the 3-year-olds. But yeah, so I called his references. Both his previous landlords were like, this guy's not only a good tenant, he's an asset. Those are the words they used. I was like, what do you mean an asset? Like, he's really handy, fixes things, stays on top of things, keeps really, I miss them if they want to, you know what I mean? I was like, well, okay, they're my, he's mine though. That's why, just a really nice guy. Right. And I always say, like, when I meet people, I get a feeling, right? When someone looks you in the eye, when they show up on time, when they follow up like they should, when they message you a proper message that makes sense and that, is detailed and they're not trying to hide anything. They're upfront about, issues with credit scores or things like that, then you're going, great. Here's what's going on. And that guy just checked all the boxes for me, right? Which is why I know we were talking about this, I think yesterday, the day before. I always want to be the one screening my tenant. I love it. It's fun. Yeah. It's like, you're finding out who your client is, right? They're going to be your client for the next, ideally, 2 or 3 years. You're going to be dealing with them monthly, collecting money from them. You want to have a good relationship with them, right? You want things to start off on the right foot. So sorry, I know I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here.
No, that's great, because I think what you said is important, right? So you manage that whole process yourself. So do you want to talk about where you posted the ad? Why you're managing it yourself? Did you have a system in place?
Yeah, Facebook Marketplace exclusively. I used to do Kijiji as well. My phone literally blows up. Like I probably had 150 messages. Just trying to manage that is tough, right? Some people don't like that. But what I have is, like, they always respond back to the ad with, first of all, I put in the ad, please respond back with, and I ask for specific information. So I want, do you smoke? Do you have pets? What's your current living situation? What's your employment status? And I put that in the ad from my first test is, do they respond with, is this available? Or do they follow the instructions and actually respond back with the information that I asked for? Yep. So that's check 1, right? Very simple task. Can they follow that? Then if they respond with, is this available? I have a copy and pasted messages where I basically respond back with, yes, it's available. And it's essentially asking for the exact same stuff again, right? Tell me your employment status, and I want all that information. And essentially from that, if it checks off, I say, great, let's book a showing. I'm doing a showing Tuesday at whatever time. Are you available, right? Then when they come, do they show up on time? I usually give them like a 15-minute appointment. If they're late, again, I just don't like late people. I don't like, I want people that are eager and think that this is an important meeting for them and understand that, it's just kind of like an interview, right? It really is. You wouldn't show up late to an interview. You wouldn't be disheveled. You wouldn't be, I'm not asking you to show up in a suit, but and then you get a sense for them. You talk to them, you have conversation with them, just kind of small talk. And again, feel like, hey, is this person someone that I want to deal with? Is this a client that I want in my life? There are clients that, are going to be paying your rent, right? Yeah. So, and then obviously from there, if they like the unit, then I say, great, fill out this application. I need a credit check. I want a copy of your driver's license, and email it back to me, right? How long does it take to email it back for them, right? Once I get that, call the references always, and give them a shout. Again, sometimes that scares people. They're like, I'm not sure. Yeah. Must do.
Yeah.
Absolute must do. And again, I was like deciding between 3 people. As soon as I called the references, it was a clear cut winner.
Yeah.
Right. When the references start calling that person an asset, and 2 different landlords, current one and the previous one. Right. So, and that's essentially it. Right. I don't care too much about credit score. People are like, oh, what was their credit score and all that? Like, I look for debts. Is there any major debts on there? Do they owe $40,000, $50,000? Is their car paid off? What are their car payments? Do they have, are they going to be able to pay the rent? Can they live? Like, do they have enough money coming in every month? This guy had $5,000 to $6,000 coming in every month, paying $1,625. I go, good. That's a good ratio. He had no major debts. He had $1,000 on a credit card. But I was like, yeah, so do I. Yeah. No problem, right? So, that's, to me what the biggest, where even like the other 2 that I should have mentioned, the one that I denied didn't want to send me the application. That was the one with the daughter with the older mother, the 7-year-old woman.
Right.
Like, cause she thought she was too good for it.
Oh,
right. She was like, no, we're good. I'm like, well, no, I need that info.
Yeah.
Right. So even though I was going to I wanted to look at them, but they didn't follow all the steps, or this guy did to a T.
Right.
And it sounds crazy, but it's like, it's that simple, right? It's that simple of just follow instructions,
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you gotta be comfortable, and the way you get comfortable is people cooperating with you. It takes 2 people to make this work. And
yeah,
you were taking the approach of who's going to work with me well right off the bat.
Yeah.
And, if like you said, if they're an asset now during the application process, it's likely their habit and it'll follow through.
Yep.
To the tenancy.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I was going to, you nailed this, but I was going to talk about the importance of the reference checks, and you talked about it. And I think it's such a crucial point, because that's when you can really figure out if information on the rental application is correct or not. Mm-hmm. And I've had a scenario where I was leasing out, I actually, like, one of my high school friends was looking to rent a place, and we were the tenant, so I was representing the tenants. I gave all the information to the potential landlord, the landlord, and their agent, and I had to follow up with the landlord or his agent to ask, "Did you guys perform the reference checks?" Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Well, I've spoke to you a few times. You're telling me that you know this person, you like them."
It's crazy.
And they're like, "We're not going to do the reference check."
Yeah,
I was like, "All right, you're lucky that."
It's wild to me. Like, why even ask for it if you're not going to call? Like, and I mean, I know sometimes, but like, again, the conversation was very simple. Hey, how's it going? This name such and such is looking to rent one of my units. I see that he lived with you from this time to this time. Oh yeah, I remember him.
Yeah.
Any red flags? Anything I should know about? No, great tenant, or, oh yeah. I'm like, did they pay the rent on time? Great. It's literally a 30 second conversation. 30 seconds. It doesn't have to be like, this crazy, if there is anything, well, they paid, like, they'll tell you right away. Mm-hmm. If, oh no, they were late a couple months, or they had problems with this, or, and again, most of them are happy to chat with you, right? There are other landlords too that are like, oh, glad to see you're doing this.
Yeah.
Good on you. Right.
Yeah.
And they have no reason to, maybe the current landlord, if they don't want them there. But the previous one was the one that, really was like, okay, this one is, a winner for sure. Right.
Yeah.
So, it's a tricky process. And a lot of time it is work. Some people are like, I want to hire it out. I don't have time for this and all that. But I'm like, look, as we've talked about, you're buying a business.
Yeah.
You could buy the perfect property. You could find a home run deal. You could do all the work yourself and have your rentals fine, just to have a tenant trash the whole place, not pay their rent. How do your numbers look now?
Yeah.
How good was your home run deal? Yeah. Right? Like, it doesn't matter how good your numbers were, how good your rentals were, how cheap they were, how good of a deal you got on flooring and yada, yada, yada. To me, you get a bad tenant, you're going to have a horrible experience. Mm-hmm. You're going to want to sell your property. Seen it time and time again. And we have investors all the time asking us, hey, why is this person selling this property? It makes money. I go, I don't know, but I would venture to guess they didn't understand what they were getting into, or they don't want to manage the property, or they had trouble with their property manager. I don't know. To me, it's one of those reasons always. And it's like, again, guys, this is not passive income.
Yeah.
It's not like, this is still active. And, it's a really good business to own, right? But you still have to be present. right? You still have to be present within the business. And, if not, JV with someone. Exactly. JV with someone, right? Like, again, like we're seeing our, your JV partners and my JV partners doing really well, financially, and we're taking on this on because we're active, right? But people want to do it themselves, and then they go, okay, I don't want to screen the tenants, or I don't want. It's like, what? Like, what?
The easiest part.
Yeah,
it takes 30 seconds, a minute.
I know, and I get that it's a little bit of but anyways, we're talking about that.
Yeah. So on the topic of tenants, since we're talking about tenants, why don't we talk about, purchasing properties with tenants in them? Because right now in the MLS, and we've both worked on deals where you can buy a property today, assume a tenant, get a great deal, and then manage the tenants on your own after you have an accepted purchase and sale agreement.
Yep.
And you're likely going to be a top candidate if you're competing with other people, if you're going to assume the tenant.
Definitely.
You're likely going to be able to get the property at a bit of a discount compared to other people. So why don't we talk about a recent experience that we've encountered on a property that I listed that you purchased.
Kind of interesting because we literally were, you're representing seller, I was representing buyer. So and again, my buyer was looking to take on a tenant to get a good price, right? And get a good property. So do you want to set it up, or how do you want to do it?
I can set it up. So this is a listing that I had in the Vanier neighborhood in Oshawa. So, if you know the Oshawa area, if you know where the Oshawa Center is, it's in the surrounding area. Semi-detached property with 2 bedrooms up in the upper unit, and then 2 bedrooms down in the lower unit.
Technically 3 up. There was that.
3 up, the den kind of the area.
Come on, don't undersell it.
I'm trying to be technical. There's no windows. There's no closet.
We're listing it as a 3-bedroom. Don't worry.
So we were able to get the upper unit vacant. So the upper unit was vacant when you saw it. The lower unit did have a tenant in the occupying the space. Tenant was paying $1,533 a month, including utilities and hydro.
So really probably $1,350, $1,300 plus utilities if you want to. Which is a little bit below market rent. It's not crazy, but as you heard, you're probably $200-300 below market rent. Which, again, shied out a lot of people, right? Yeah. Like you had a lot of people that inquired or offered and, kind of said, no, they wanted you to get vacant possession, which is hard, right?
Yeah. So the tenant downstairs, good job paying on time. We can prove that they're paying on time. The only issue was that, her lifestyle had a lot of...
She was a hoarder.
She was a hoarder, yes. Trying to set it up nicely. Cam comes in with a
come on, man. Let's not sugarcoat this.
So, yeah, she has quite a bit of stuff in her unit to a point where, like, walking into a bedroom is difficult.
And a spider.
And she had a... What did you call it?
It's tarantula, man. That was... Yes. What do I call it? It was a tarantula. The thing was massive. That thing shouldn't be legal.
Yeah. So... Anyways, you guys, you've seen the property through just me talking about it, listing it, pictures and such, but your clients actually purchased this sight unseen, and purchased it assuming the tenant.
Yep.
And kind of, right.
With some clauses in there that we'll touch on in a second.
Yeah. And essentially the approach you were going to take was, we'll try and get a deal on this, and then you will manage the tenant in terms of trying to get the tenant out legally with the proper forms. So do you want to briefly touch on the Schedule A and what kind of clauses that you had? So Schedule A is a schedule that is part of the purchase and sale agreement that has essentially conditions that need to be fulfilled by a certain date or prior to closing.
Yep. So here's the way I pitched it to my client. It was kind of like 3 different scenarios that could happen here. So we purchased it just before July 1st. It was about a week before July 1st. So we had a closing date just after September, which was enough time to give 60 days notice. But it was
Why is that important? Why is the September 1st?
Because you need to give 60 days notice for the N12. right? Which is N12 is if the buyer's moving it into it for their personal use. There's a couple other options on the form there as well, but that was my client's intention, right? They're happy to move into it, live there, and rent out the upper unit and live in the basement kind of thing. So what we thought is, okay, we're about a week before July 1st. That gives us about 7 days to try to get an N11 negotiated, which is both tenants, it's the tenant and the landlord mutually agreeing to end the tenancy. And it's almost like a contract where it's like, look, both parties are agreeing, and it's just more secure. It's more, hey, this tenant has signed it and agreed. If they decided to then change their mind or something, it'd be a very easy eviction, which N12 we'll touch on in a second, but the N11 is what you normally see with cash for keys, things like that, right? It's very simple form, just saying, hey, we're ending the tenancy as of this date. So what we tried to do is saw the place, tried to say to the lower tenant, look, we are planning on moving into it. We will still compensate your 1 month rent. Would you be willing to sign this N11? Answer was pretty much no, not directly, but it was no. I'm going to get a lawyer and I'm doing this. I'm saying, look, okay, no problem. If you don't want to do that, we'll serve the N12 on the 1st, right? Or the day before the 1st, which gives them 60 days notice. It's a notice that essentially says, hey, we're giving you 60 days. We're going to be moving in September 1st. And then with that, you file the L2, which goes to the LTB. Again, so that was option 2. So my client's N11 is option 1. If not, we're going to ask the sellers to serve the N12 on our behalf and file the L2 on our behalf. And then third option is worst case scenario. You have to take on these tenants for a couple months until the eviction happens. They're still paying pretty decent rent, and the upper unit is vacant. So when we were buying it, we kind of said, okay, let's look at all three of these options. The worst case scenario is we're still taking on a tenant who's still paying decent rent, still has a really good job. Not taking on a tenant paying $600 a month.
That's right.
Right. Or who isn't paying or things like that. So that's the way we were kind of looking at the purchase. And I don't know if you want to go into a little more detail with the L2 process or.
Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to summarize a few things. So essentially you had to make sure that in the purchase and sale agreement, in the Schedule A, you had a clause saying that, us as the sellers and my sellers will cooperate with you in the event that any documents need to be signed, right? So we had to make sure that clause was in there so that, my clients are willing to draft and sign, because the N11 that you issued has to be signed by the current landlord.
Correct.
Right? So first, had to make sure that there's cooperation. Then there was a clause saying that we'll be working with you to get an N11 signed. There's another clause in there saying that we'll be working with you to get the N12 signed. And then later we put in a clause saying that in the event that there's any compensation required as part of either N11 or N12, that the new buyers would be assuming that expense. And that's essentially a negotiation that we had based on what your clients wanted and what my clients wanted. Yep. But so let's talk about this. With the N11, you are not obligated for any financial compensation. With the N12, you have to essentially either provide the existing tenant with another suitable unit for them to live in. Correct. Or compensate them 1 month's rent.
Correct.
Right? You decided to, take the upper hand and still offer them 1 month's rent if they agree to sign the N11. You didn't have to do that.
Correct. Yeah.
But you were just trying to essentially be proactive and make the
we still wanted to follow the rules, right? We still wanted to say, look, we're still moving into this unit regardless. Yeah. Even if we're getting the N11 signed, to me the N11 is just a more secure way, right? If they want to fight it at the LTB with the N12, they're backed up 6 months, right? So this is the risk for my client, is that if let's say 2 days before on September 1st, I think closing is the 2nd or 3rd, that they want to dispute it, then we got to wait 4 or 5 months for an LTB hearing, right? So, basically my client can still collect rent during that time. I don't know if they'll pay if they're if they're unhappy, but But again, it's 4 or 5 months of them having to deal with stress and issues and things like that. So to me, the N11 would have been more stress-free. So that's why, we'd say, hey, no problem. We'll go this route. First, try it. If it doesn't work, no problem. Yeah, and sometimes I've done it where we just made it straight up. I was lucky that this client was willing to move into the property. Where sometimes investors are like, you know what, Kim, I can't move into this property, and I get it. So we would just simply make it conditional on getting an N11 signed. And I've done that for a previous buyer in Whitby Semi, where we made it conditional on it. The sellers wanted to do it themselves. They went and spoke to it, provided us with 2 N11s for both tenants. We firmed up, saying great. So we got a good deal on a property and got both N11s signed.
Right.
So, again, it is possible in this market. It just takes a little bit of education from, especially if the realtor you're working with doesn't know the rules or what's going on. I was lucky that you were able to, and your clients were pretty experienced investors too, so they understood the rules and stuff like that and got what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
Right. How we were trying to protect ourselves, but also make the deal fair for both sides, kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah. So essentially, if you can N11 because both parties are agreeing to end the tenancy without any sort of compensation involved. If that doesn't work, N12, and as part of the N12, you have to serve the N12 to the tenant. And then you also have to go through the L2 process, which is essentially making a registration with the LTB that an N12 has been served. And as part of that process, because on the N12, you're saying that your purchaser is going to be moving into the property. So on or before the date of hearing, you also need to provide an affidavit from a lawyer, essentially a letter saying that your clients are going to be moving in. And this letter, it's essentially a promise saying that we are moving in, and it's being notarized by a lawyer.
But the L2 process is important too, because what I did even with the tenant was saying, look, we're going to do everything legit. So once we have the L2 filed, here's our number. Call them. Call them. We're not hiding anything, right? We're not doing anything. And I'm hoping that makes them realize, okay, let me start looking for a place. Let me get out of there and realize we're not bluffing.
That's
right. We are not, anything like that. So, it's an important part of it. And again, these situations are tricky. When people come to us to work with us, I'm going to pump our tires a little bit here, but again, these are things that we help with that the average realtor just can't.
That's right.
Yeah. And, that's the key with working with an investor-focused realtor. They can help you with the purchase. They can help you with dealing with tenants. They can help you with renovations. They can help you finding tenants or screening tenants. It's not just, here's the sale and see you never kind of thing, right? So, anyways, that's it. I want you to touch on a little bit about the pros and cons, our last topic here of separating the utilities in the units. Are you planning on doing it in your 3 properties? What's the process like? How much is it costing you? Anything you want to touch on that?
Definitely. So when it comes to separating your utilities and hydro, technically you can, there are 3 separate things that you can, that you can try and separate, right? So first is your electricity. You can try and separate all your electrical for the upper unit and lower unit. You can separate your gas meter. So for example, your furnace and AC and your hot water tank that use gas, hot water tank sometimes, you can separate that. What that essentially means is that you would need 2 furnaces, 2 ACs, separate ductwork for the unit. And then I haven't seen anyone do this on the smaller units, but sometimes the water, like you can try and separate the water.
Can separate water for sure.
By having essentially separate water supply to the upper and lower unit. And the whole idea behind this is that, your tenants that you have in the property have absolute assurance that what they're paying for in terms of utilities and hydro are for their own consumption and no one else's consumption, right? Because oftentimes, or the traditional method or the easy way that people do it is they do a simple split with leases. So they say we're going to have one bill for water, electricity, gas. At the end of the month, I'm going to get the bill. I'm going to separate it, 60-40, 70-30 between upper and lower unit. And sometimes that creates an argument because, tenant downstairs says the upper tenant has more people, they're using more water, more electricity, so on and so forth. I'm not in the unit as much. Why do I need to be, liable for 50%, 40%, whatever the split is?
Yep.
I find it often creates additional conversations and headache that you perhaps don't want. So by separating it, you're giving your tenant, one, a peace of mind that what they're paying for is solely for their consumption. It keeps the house more organized. So if something goes wrong, that it's either related to the upper unit or to the lower unit. But I think most importantly, it also gives you a good valuation when it comes to refinancing the property or when it comes to selling the property as well.
Definitely.
Right. So,
so what are you separating in your units right now?
So electricity for sure.
Yeah.
Electricity I am separating and actually making it, accessible to both tenants at their own will. So for example, everything for the upper unit, the panel for the upper unit is located in the upper unit. So if a breaker goes, my upper unit tenant does not need to go to the basement. So if something goes, they need to check breakers, it's accessible to them in their unit and they can check it. Same with the lower unit as well.
Yep.
From a cost perspective, I'm finding that in Oshawa, I'm able to do it between $11,000 to $13,000
for all electrical, right?
For all electrical.
What about just separating? What about just adding 2 separate meters and 2 panels? Any idea?
So let's say we're excluding pot lights. We're not talking about any of that stuff. We're just talking
like how much additional, right? If you were to say, okay, like I'm gonna. I'm just going to run electrical and, that's still probably, in my guess, would be around $8,000-9,000. I would guess $2,000-3,000 in addition.
Exactly. So I've recently going through it, panel upgrades. So to increase from 100 to 200 amps was $2,000 for me. The cleanup, which means separating everything that's existing in the basement, in terms of wires coming in and going, was another $2,000.
Yeah.
And then there's, of course, the labor and material part, which I would assume it's probably another $3,000 as well. So around $7,000, $8,000
to separate, right? And then probably 4 or 5, you're guessing, for pot lights, that kind of stuff.
Pot lights, you have pot lights if you are planning on putting pot lights. You have your 3-in-1 detector, so your smoke. Strobe and your CO detectors. Those are often expensive. In Oshawa, each bedroom in the lower unit requires one, and then one in the common room. And then in your upper unit, if the property you purchased did have smoke and CO in the bedrooms, you're required to put it in the bedrooms. But if it didn't, you're only required to put in a common area and in the kitchen area. So in a 3+2, you can potentially be looking at 5 or 6 smoke detectors, and they're, from what I've heard, they're pricey. They could be $200-300 each. So that adds up quick as well.
Yeah, key there point I just want to highlight too. If you're like you paid $2,000 to upgrade from 100 to 200 amp, right? So I always emphasize it, or when we're looking at houses, to say, look, this already has 200 amps. And why that is, an extra $2,000 that you could save there. So if your home that you've purchased or you're looking to purchase already has a 200 amp service there, there's $2,000 where you're not going to have to, pay, right? I know in one of my units, I have both of my panels are downstairs, and I paid $1,800 just to get the 2 meters there, just to separate the 2 meters. The panels weren't like, both panels are in the basement, which, again, preferably I'd have one up and one down. That's what I'm doing in Madison as well.
Yeah.
So the costs depend on what you have and what you're planning on doing, and how nice you want to make it. If you're going from 1 to 2 and doing 2 separate panels in each of the units, again, that's additional work, additional labor. But in the grand scheme of $100K reno, an extra $2,000-3,000 to upgrade to separate meters, and I wouldn't do it any other way either.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth it because electricity is also one of those things where you have internet connected to it. You have your lights.
It changes the most, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Heat you can get on, just monthly billing, and it's what do they call it? Where they
Equal billing?
Equal billing, yeah. Where they spread it out over the year, and it's pretty stable. Water, same thing, quarterly. You know, not crazy fluctuation unless so where like where the hydro can be the most, you know, have the most fluctuation. So depending on usage. So I think definitely that's definitely one you want to separate for sure. And then the others, you know, I know you guys looked into separating your heat and furnaces, and that was a little bit too much for you guys, or just kind of the process was challenging?
Tricky, It was tricky because we found out that in the city of Oshawa, they're not allowing 2 furnaces. Based on what we've been told, they're not allowing 2 furnaces in the basement unit. So you would need to create a mechanical room upstairs or in the attic.
And I've seen that before.
Exactly. So we didn't have space on the upper unit, and we really weren't comfortable with doing it in the attic either. So we decided to just go with the one. I find that the cost benefit on the gas is a lot higher, because now you're talking about 2 furnaces, 2 AC. So right there, you could be around
just a lot,
$12,000 just there.
To me, that's too much.
Exactly. And then, but that's not all. You need ductwork, separate ductwork. And it's not that the material is expensive for the ductwork. It's now having to have bulkheads throughout your whole basement. And bulkheads are ugly. So, you know, bulkheads they span 12 to 24 feet. And then if you need separate, then now you're talking about almost like 5 feet of bulkhead. Likely running throughout the middle of your house and the outside of your house. So that to me it doesn't look nice.
No, agreed.
There's a cost factor there as well. And now from a labor perspective, now you also need additional labor time, because now you have to go ahead and change your layout upstairs. You need to create another mechanical room. So I wouldn't be surprised if this whole process of separating your gas is, you know, upwards of $20,000.
Yeah, having separate heating systems. And cooling systems.
If you have a large enough space, I don't know, maybe it's worth it. Otherwise, it just didn't make sense for us in this property. And water, we didn't go through that. I mean, to be honest, I didn't even look at the cost factor of it.
I've had one client do the water, and they basically had like their main meter coming into the house, and then they had 2 sub meters. And so they still had to do the calculation, but they could calculate and bill according to, but the water you still have to keep in the owner's name.
Right.
You can't like the beauty of the hydro, and it's definitely something we need to cover, is that, you know, you get the tenants to put that directly into their name, which is a beautiful thing. If they don't pay, that's on them, right?
Yeah, the bill comes to their name. It's under their credit bureau if anything goes into collection.
Exactly, right? Where, so for me, you know, I'm doing separate meters, but I'm keeping the heat and water in my name and just billing it to them, still a 60-40 split, but them paying their own hydro 100%.
Yeah. And I guess on the water side, like what we got to mention is that every month or every 3 months, you're still obligated to go in, take the meter reading, submit it, and then they do the math of previous reading, new reading, and what's the difference, and bill people. So if you miss it 1 month...
Well, they estimate it. I've had that problem where I've had that problem where I just haven't done it, and then I have to go back and reconcile because I forgot. But you know, what I now use it as is like a quarterly check-in.
Right.
I'm coming to check the water meter. I come, you know, check the smoke detectors, you know, make sure all the eaves troughs are still connected and you know, going away from the house. So I kind of, you know, use it as an excuse to get into the unit and be present. And it works well too.
And do you have that in your lease agreement saying that you're going to be doing quarterly checks on those items?
I just let them know.
Yeah.
I just let them know that, hey, you know, here's what's going to happen and all that. It is in the Appendix B that I have, which is, you know, 27 pages and has all, you know, rules and stuff like that. But I just let them know, look, I'm going to come do the water reading. It's checking to make sure everything's good. And, you know, usually they appreciate it, right? Usually they're like, oh, great. Wow, you're on top of this, right? So,
yeah, good stuff.
Wow, good conversation today.
Yeah, great conversation. That was good. A lot of topics in there. I guess we'll just leave it with workshop coming up on July 24th. July 24th at 10 a.m.
Yep.
We'll have links on our social media page. So if you're interested in seeing some properties in the Oshawa region, feel free to register to our workshop. We'll be looking at these properties in person, talking about strategic renovations, talking about the numbers to support the deal. And yeah, we hope to see you out there. And again, thanks for watching and tuning into another episode. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them below. And if you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe to our channel. We have 30. Wow.
Okay.
Golf clap.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.